Martin, thanks for coming back and continuing on this really interesting sessions that we've been having regarding the recruitment process and Talent Drive and what you're doing here in the South. Can we focus today on the candidate experience? You know, we've talked about where the marketplace is. We've talked about a company's approach and the things that companies can do to attract talent. This market has completely changed. You know, 6 months ago, it was a market where if you were a candidate, the world was your oyster. Now we're in a situation where there is lots of candidates being flooded onto the market. Furlough's going to end. I mean, I don't know. It'd be really interesting to understand your perspective of furlough. You get a little bit edgy with this,
sure.
But I think that would be interesting from a recruitment perspective. The whole landscape for candidates has completely changed away, and they need to also rethink the way that they approach job interviews and stuff like that. Give us your views on how that's changed and the things that they need to think about.
Yeah, sure. It's a good question. So I think firstly, from a general candidate point of view, you're absolutely right. And the candidate's approach has got to essentially be going from one that's quite reactive to people like me, calling them and saying, hey, we've got this job, to a proactive approach. And what I mean by that is not necessarily just relying on recruiters, but it's relying on your whole professional network. So whether that's a supplier that you've worked with, a stakeholder from before, whether that's a previous boss or an ex-colleague that's gone elsewhere, it's utilising your network. And what's really going to be the differentiator is people that not only are proactive, but we talk a lot about the personal branding, and whether that's embracing a lot more in social media, and there's a lot of people and recruiters talking about elevating your personal branding in the marketplace, not just through LinkedIn, but webinars and all sorts of other things that people can do. Elevating your personal branding will build out your network, and if you're proactive with building out that network, you're going to have more chance to get a job in an incredibly tough employment market at the moment. And unfortunately, I think with furlough, and I'll share my views on that, but it's going to get tougher before it gets better. The reality is over the next couple of months, with the furlough scheme ending, there's going to be more unemployment. There's potential muted around 10% unemployment in the UK of the workforce, which is a really scary number.
Yeah.
I think we're about 4 or 5% at the moment, so it's potentially going to be double digit. So by that, you can't just rely on recruiters. You can't just rely on people like me, and you might be thinking, well, that's not a plug for Talent Drive, but I'm actively encouraging people to go out to their own professional network, elevate that brand, think about the personal branding. Don't just think about your CV. CV is important. We'll come on to talk about the CV, but you've really got to be proactive. And I think with the furlough scheme, look, something had to be done. Of course.
I think we all agree that was a good measure.
Absolutely.
Under crazy circumstances. However,
I think for employers, I heard this expression on another podcast recently of kicking the can down the road and delaying the inevitable, which unfortunately means now we're going to get a real influx in September on what that is. I think the other thing I would say is for general people, whether it's procurement or any other industry, is it's also looking a bit about entrepreneurial flair at the moment. So it's not just relying on, if I'm talking to a procurement manager and they're looking at procurement manager jobs in the South, well, actually, to our point about flexible working, what about procurement manager roles across the whole of UK? You don't need to be on site. So that's one mindset. And the entrepreneurial flair as well is actually, there's going to be interim demand. We talked about those sort of doors opening and shutting and stuff, but there's going to be projects that are coming forward. So more people can look at reinventing themselves, offering pro bono work, trying to work with charities and startups and techs and people that maybe they've not thought about having a procurement
that's really
team.
Interesting.
And really trying to tap into those guys. Again, it's about being proactive.
And I suppose you're right, in terms of the entrepreneurial stuff is obviously building a story out of your ability and the ability, as you say, if you're going to project yourself somewhere up country, or a different part of the country, there's obviously an environment there where if you can talk really effectively about the systems that you've got in place and the way that you work from home and how you can actually support an organisation based somewhere that isn't commutable every day, then that again, I think, obviously,
definitely, absolutely, and I think even I was talking to someone earlier today to contextualise this, and actually I've said the ex-client might be not in a commutable location for you, but have you thought about doing some advisory work for even 2 to 3 days a week? Get your sort of toe in the water, and hopefully over time, a bit of an almost awful expression maybe, but that try before you buy type thing with people, and actually then they can then go, okay, you've delivered X to us, and we can then justify a permanent role for you. But I think transitioning that and looking at ways you can be creative around that and show a bit of entrepreneurial flair, I think you'll be able to capitalise the market far more effective than just sitting back and putting your CV out on job boards.
Yeah, and I suppose also is that to talk to your piece in terms of that entrepreneurship is that, we're a global world these days. So actually, given the fact that this is a global depression and this is a global problem with people being made redundant all over the world, I'm sure actually that relates to somebody that lives in Europe who speaks fabulous English, applying for an organisation, doing their research that actually they may be transacting in Europe already, and maybe actually having a way forward with that.
Absolutely. I'm doing a podcast tomorrow with a guy that's based in France and someone that's based in Surrey, and then we're discussing a role at the back of it that's going to be based in London. So it's just, it doesn't matter. Those barriers have been lifted a bit, and I think that should hopefully, I'm hoping, sort of stimulate the market as well a bit.
So that talent pool is getting massive in terms of, certainly the candidate pool is getting massive. What do you think are the top things that a candidate should really focus down on if they see themselves are coming towards the end of a furlough and they think the unfortunate message is going to be played, or they find themselves that they've already been made redundant because the business has not succeeded? What would you advise straight off the bat in terms of the things that they need to really just try and get collected in their thoughts to get themselves into the marketplace in a good way? So
I think firstly, be succinct and be really clear with what you want to do in your next role, and have those deliverables very sort of clear on your CV. Whether in our market that's cost savings, that's supplier innovation, maybe you've managed a team and you want to highlight some of the successes that they have. You want that in the opening couple of lines. The attention span on many hiring managers is probably around 30 seconds. So if you're telling about every single generic contract negotiation you've had, they're going to switch off. So I think make it punchy, make it succinct, make it very relatable to that set business, and actually put a bit of personality in it as well, particularly around sort of hobbies and interests and other passions you've done. Look at some other extracurricular, whether that's mentoring, whether that's doing some work for a charity, but differentiate yourself from just, I'm a procurement manager looking for X, Y, and Z. The market's going to change.
Do you think that's that's interesting? That's just spawned a question in my mind. Is that obviously a lot of organisations, but the more larger organisations have invested in automated talent management. Where AI, so actually, the careers inbox is actually not going to get a mark or an eyeball on it. It's actually going to be lexically scanned, and then it's going to have some AI applied to it. How do have you got any words of wisdom in terms of how you navigate that particular issue? Because that might be the blocker that actually stops you from starting to show that personality. Is it?
Yeah, well, I think there's always, my view is that there'll always be a human side to every sort of transaction that's been made from a procurement professional with a stakeholder. AI and robotics is a really fascinating topic that we've talked about a lot, and I talk about a lot of people, and I could go on for hours about it, but I think automation will come in at the more tactical, transactional front end of a process when they're running a tender, and we're seeing that now, actually, the AI and robotics piece coming in. But then the emphasis on the human touch is more that stakeholder management piece, and actually making sure in the supplier relationship management bit that essentially the contract's doing what was said. So that automation bit at the front end, at the back end, the human touch is going in saying, have you delivered what we've sort of said? And I don't think any automation can necessarily do that. But yeah, it's definitely something that we're seeing a real rise in the procurement market, which again has more of an emphasis now on the soft skills and the real stakeholder management as a real key skill. So again, putting that on your CV and reinforcing that is going to put people ahead of the game.
So, yeah, interesting. So, if we delve a little bit further into what organisations are trying to do to support those new candidates, you know, we've talked a little bit about working from home in the previous sessions and things like that. Supporting those new candidates and supporting workers that are already doing that. So not only new hires but existing hires, I think is a really important factor. In a lot of the previous Vissensa Talks, we've talked about mental well-being. You know, that is giving people the right tools to allow them to do their job properly. That may well be software tools, it may well be equipment. They've got to have the right environment. You know, obviously in the wrong environment, then actually you're not going to get the best out of that particular candidate and stuff like that. What's your thoughts around that in terms of coaching candidates to make sure that, you know, if they're going to do a Zoom call, they're not in their bedroom? For want of, you know, perhaps, and sometimes it has to be. But how do you mitigate that situation that sometimes people can't afford to have a permanent place to work from home? And what do you do if you're a candidate that wants to be flexible in terms of some home working, because clearly that's what the organisation wants, but actually it's not your preferred method of working in that respect?
Well, I think we got to be careful we don't go too one way or the other. You know, some people like home working and have embraced it. Some people don't like it as much and want the office. I think with mental well-being, I think businesses need to be careful. They don't just go, right, it's 5 days a week, here's all your software, crack on and go, and almost I'll check in at the end of the week, because people want to interact with people, whether that's online or whether that's face-to-face like we're doing today. I think there needs to be a balance. So I think, you know, from a well-being point of view, having those check-in calls daily, you know, I've seen many of my procurement teams that have set up little sort of group chat discussions as well in the day, and
we do that.
Ideas.
So we have this coffee meetings,
sending a picture of your sandwich for your lunch, or I've seen one company they're all into their cycling and they do little routes at their lunchtime, and they've being quite competitive at the scores. That's brilliant, that kind of stuff. And I think there still needs to be the check-in, and hopefully when businesses can start going back into their office environment again, you know, that hopefully will find a little bit of a balance and continue as well. Because I think it's been great for, certainly me personally, I've been able to connect with my family more and spend more time with, you know, my nieces and nephews and other people in my life. But again, I do also miss people. I miss interacting and having that. So I think it's just being adaptable to the individual and making sure you're still checking in with them.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to do that here. We have these coffee meetings, coffee catch-ups, and I'm sure lots of organisations are doing the same. And we also have introduced some crazy games and quizzes and stuff like that on one of them. So probably every month, 6 weeks, what we'll do is, you know, Sam organised a horse race, and we all bet on the horse race from some obscure place on the planet, so that nobody knew what that horse race was about. We did a music quiz. We did a crazy hat competition. So I think you're right. Is that it's a case of, and the reason why we did it was obviously in terms of when we were all social distancing to try and just help that cohesion. But you know, I think it's going to be a while before you get everybody back in an office, and so there is going to be a staggered approach to people coming in and not coming in, and so therefore including those people that are currently at home because they're not in that cycle of coming in on that particular day. I do agree with you. I think that is really important to just show that the fabric of the business is still, it's a team. You talked in one of the other sessions about, you know, teamwork and being it's a team sport.
Absolutely.
And I think successful companies are the ones that can embrace the fact that we are still in a team sport, even though.
And it's important more than ever. Like it's been an awful few months for every single person on a personal and professional level, even if you've got job security or not. It's been incredibly stressful, whether that's having to furlough your team or being furloughed or maybe redundant yourself. So it's even more important than ever to stay connected. And I just hope that that's sustainable long term and businesses don't just, you know, forget that later down the line.
Brilliant. So look, we're at the end of this session, Martin. It's been absolutely fabulous talking to you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure to hear those insights, and yeah, just brilliant. Thank you for your expertise.
Pleasure. I see you.